Hey, what's up everybody, this is Circ501 and today I want to show you guys a new Amara build that is my personal favorite build for farming any of the circles of slaughters. And this build is a bit more focused and built around those circles of slaughters and killing groups of enemies, but it can still be super strong against bosses and just overall really strong for anything you want to do in the game. Now, another really good thing about this build is pretty much nothing is really required in terms of items. The only thing I would say that's pretty required and central to the build, at least for killing groups of enemies and circles of slaughters and stuff, is the phaser class mod. It's just overall going to make you so much stronger and give you that cooldown that this is pretty vital for that type of stuff. But boss killing, you don't really need this. You can use anything you want. And even if you don't have this for like circles of slaughters and stuff, you're still going to be pretty strong. And for weapons, pretty much any elemental weapon that's strong is going to be good. Any shield mod, grenade mod, artifact, any of that type of stuff is going to be pretty good in this build as long as it's a strong item. Now, going into the skill tree, first we're going to go into the Fist of Elements, which is the main one. So you're going to go 5 out of 5 anima, which is, just status effect, damage, duration, super strong for that. We have Infusion, which a portion of your damage is now your action skill element, just making your actual shots do a lot more damage and also change it to element. The really cool thing about this as well, especially if you're say doing something like the Circle Slaughter on Pandora, is you can use say a corrosive or element on your weapon and have your fire action skill element and do multiple elements off one weapon. Then we have Tempest, which is just elemental damage increase, then extra shock damage if you're using that. Dread, which gives you gun damage when you grasp an enemy, which is pretty strong because you're doing that quite a bit. Indiscriminate, which is basically just a chance to ricochet shots everywhere, which a lot of people underestimate this, especially in this type of build. A lot of people underestimate how much damage this thing can actually do. Then we have Deep Well, which if you're using an elemental weapon, you get more magazine size increase. 5 out of 5 sustainment, which when you do elemental damage to the weapon, you basically have 20% lifesteal. This is pretty much our only way of keeping ourselves alive, which if we just don't get destroyed in one shot, you pretty much just full heal off a majority of the attacks you do. Then we have Forceful Expression, which is pretty much just 18% extra damage increase, which is based on your action skill element. So next we're going into the Mythical Assault tree. We actually don't have any points in the Brawl tree, but the Mythical Assault tree, we're doing 5 out of 5 do harm, which you could stack up to 99 times with how this build is with the class mod and everything. And we're using Phase Grasp, so you can stack this up to 99 times pretty much just consistently without hitting anything, which if you don't know, if you use Phase Grasp and it doesn't hit anything, the cooldown comes back right away. They also did, I'm pretty sure, decrease the time and when you can cast the next Phase Grasp in one of the patches. So if you don't hit anything, pretty much they made it faster to be able to use the next one because it refreshes the cooldown. And you can get up to 99 stacks of do harm, which gives us action skill damage for every stack. And then also Violent Tapestry we have, which when they have 2 out of 5 in that, but that'll also stack up to 99 times as well, doing it that way, which pretty much makes our status effects have a really high chance to go off. And then we also do more damage, which also with do harm, there's some confusion around this item, but there has been quite a bit of testing from people on Reddit and different articles and stuff like that. And the thing with do harm, with the ability we're using for killing groups of enemies, such as Ties of Bind, which pretty much makes we grasp an enemy, everything around it gets tied to that enemy, and they take a percentage, 35% of the damage that main enemy takes. Now, do harm is action skill damage, but do harm will actually increase the damage that all of the linked enemies take. It will not increase the damage, or I guess technically do damage to the main grass enemy, but all the enemies will take more damage from that with do harm. And then we already went over Violent Tapestry, basically just status effect chance increase. Then we have Alacrity, which is a reload increase. Basically, you gain reload speed for every stack of rush, and after you consume your rush stacks, you gain more reload speed. I basically just put 2 into that and found the tapestry just for more points. Neither of these are super vital, but just putting a few into both of those I think helps more. 5 out of 5 restless, which is cooldown rate, always useful. Then we have ascendant, which we're using allure, which is 100% increase. And basically what allure does is you create a singularity. So basically this just makes it a much bigger singularity, which also helps with my favorite weapon, because enemies being closer is very helpful with the specific weapon I like, which we will go into all of the, really good gear for this. Because even though this build doesn't have gear that's super vital to it, there's clearly items that are just completely ridiculous for this build. Then we went 3 out of 3 laid bare, which when you deal damage with your action skill, the enemies take 25% damage increase. Now, this also does work the same as do harm, basically. Any of the tied enemies from your ties that bind will get laid bare put on them. That's pretty much how it plays out to working. Then we have Wrath, which you get a gun damage increase, and that doubles after you use an action skill. I put 2 into this, so pretty big damage increase or gun damage increase. Then I put 2 into From Rest, which is a fire rate increase, and then a charge speed increase, which is the main reason I put 2 into this as well, is because of that charge speed increase. And then you do have both 2 elements unlocked for this. You do have fire for your action skill element, and then you have shock, which is your baseline. Putting nothing into brawl, you don't have corrosive, so just take that into consideration. But you can still use just corrosive weapons and still do other elements with that. Now, as you'll see in the footage of my Circles of Slaughter, the main weapon I'm using for those are recursions. Now, you can get spooling recursions, which makes it do 2 shots. And basically what this does is it pretty much shoots out a, elemental Captain America shield that bounces around and hits stuff. This can also proc indiscriminate. You'll see sometimes in the footage that there's just like dozens of these things bouncing around everywhere, or lines everywhere, just multiple projectiles going everywhere. And you're going to want to try to get a double shot one, so it does ×2. That does a lot more damage than the single shot ones. Also, what's good about recursions is, as you can see, it has a low chance for a status effect element, even though that's massively increased because of our build. But all of the recursions do a ridiculous amount of status effect damage. This one is 4,300 per second, which is ridiculous. And since it's a melee one, you can get every element. As you can see, I've pretty much been keeping these. I had a bunch of these on my Chuck and Mule character, so I have just a ton of these. Pretty much every element on a double recursion. These things seem to be pretty common. At least I guess I've gotten lucky over my entire play length, and I ended up saving a bunch of these. But any element you want, get a recursion. Even if you don't have a ×2 recursion, it's still going to be super good. And these are going to bounce quicker in between the enemies with a lure. So we have a lure that creates a singularity and pulls all the enemies together. And when you shoot one, it's going to bounce between them much quicker because they're so much closer, just making the burst damage seem a lot more ridiculous and just killing stuff a lot quicker. As you'll see in the video, I'll shoot one shot and just destroy a ton of badass enemies. It is ridiculously strong. Other good weapons are Cutsmen, always super good, have super high status effect damage. These are things that shoot out and create lines that get longer. Ridiculously good damage. You can get any element with these as well. Crossroads are also super strong. Just shoots out a bunch of shots super quickly. Can get every element on those as well. And as you'll see for some of the boss stuff, Cutsmen are super good for bosses. Recursions are good for bosses. Cutsmen are good for bosses. If you need to, basically, if you want to do the kind of crit swap glitch, you can do that with Cutsmen's actually and use an Unforgiving, which you will see me doing that in Grave Ward. So you can do that. Anointed stuff specifically for bosses, if you have good anointed stuff, like this one has face cast damage increase. For bosses, you don't need ties that bind, so you can just switch to whatever element or whatever action skill you want if you have an anointed for that. So for a boss, I would say have this cutsman right here, face slam increased my weapon damage. So I'd face slam with this cutsman. So just, you know, you could switch your action skill along to whatever anointed you have if you're doing bosses. Other good weapons, muskets. This is basically a flamethrower. It does a ridiculous amount of fire damage. You have Night Hawkins, which are super good as well. Just get a ridiculous amount of shots off. All that type of stuff. Pretty much those are the best elemental weapons I think in the game. Also, if you're using the artifact I'm using, which is a planetoid, which makes you do increased elemental damage if you're affected by the element, Sellout is clearly the best for Incendiary and Corrosive because you can apply it to yourself so easily because of its chance. Pretty much with our build, this has a 100% chance to put those elements on targets. So if you want to proc that for boss killing, which I do in the video, you can do that very easily. We already went over the Phaser class mod. Shields, pretty much anything you want. I'm using the shield because it's a tanky shield and it has a phase grasp anointed buff on it. So pretty much just any shield you want to use that you like using. Grenades as well, anything that's strong. Spring Epicenter I'm using right here is really strong. If you have any you know, good hexes, I have recurring hex is also super good. You also have Hunter Seekers, which are also pretty good. And that's pretty much the entire build. It's a super strong build for everything in the game. As you'll see in the footage, you can kill bosses super quickly. It's super fun for doing Circles of Slaughter, which I still think are probably the best farms in the game for just legendaries and experience and stuff like that. But that is the entire build. Subscribe if you want to see more Borderlands 3 content. Leave a like if you liked the video. Leave a comment down below if you have any questions about the build, where any of these items come from, or anything like that. Leave it in the comments. I'll try to reply to everybody. And thanks for watching.